And then when I showed that to him, he really liked it, and it was something I just put together, just kind of, let's do this, and I put it together in a couple hours, and it was this piece,
Was that after he came back?
I think it might have still been while he was gone, or it might have been after he came back, but it was in the same context in that there was no real input from Frank about it. I came up with the concept, did it, and then showed it to him, either when he got back or if he was already back.
Yeah, that would be the fall of '68 when he's doing Berlin and the riots and all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So would
now, let me just explain quickly before I forget, Burnt Weenie Sandwich.
Yeah.
That was actually done much earlier. That was done in New York before we left New York, at the same time that I was working on Lumpy Gravy and We're Only In It for the Money, even before they came out. And it was originally done for a cover for Moop Records, which was a series of jazz albums that Alan Douglas was going to put out, and he hired Frank. He hired Frank's company, and I was an employee of the company at the time, to do. Well, let me rephrase that, because I don't want that to go out. But again, we'll go over all this.
Right.
I don't want to say I was an employee, because I'm not going to consider that period as an employee for legal reasons.
Okay.
But at any rate, I did it. I did the work for Frank, and Frank was supplying it to Alan Douglas from his ad agency, Nifty, Tough, and Bitchin. Alan Douglas hired him to do a series of covers and packaging and whatever else was involved in producing that,
He hired him to do the covers?
Well, he hired Frank to come up with the whole concept for this little record company that he wanted to do, which had albums from, I guess I don't really know much about how the music business works, despite the fact that I was involved in it for so long.
Right.
But apparently he had the rights, or he owned these specific masters. One of them was Richie Havens, one of them was Eric Dolphy, and one of them was the others. I can't remember the others offhand. But for Eric Dolphy, I did the Burnt Weenie piece. But anyway, Alan Douglas hired Frank's company to package this company, this little record company that he was doing, to release these albums, which involved advertising and involved the packaging and the whole concept. So it wasn't just the art, but it was to package these albums. And then Frank came up with this idea, Moop Records. Just very bizarre, off-the-wall stuff.
How do you spell that?
M-O-O-P.
Right.
There are some ads. I could send you copies. You might even have seen them at some point that were in like Hit Parade or magazine. Just funny little cartoons that made no sense at all.
Right. Now, what was the name of Frank's company?
Realistic.
So, what was Frank's company's name that was hired to do this?
Nifty, Tough, and Bitchin.
Oh, okay. Which is mentioned on We're Only In It for the Money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it's basically an ad agency, but a creative agency, I guess, beyond ad agency.
And this guy Douglas did not know who Frank's employees were.
Well,
which would be you.
At some point, it was a very small company, But the point was that he hired Frank, or he paid Frank to come up with the whole concept.
Right.
These releases. But then, when he saw how weird it was, he backed out. And I don't really know what their arrangement was, whether Frank got paid or he didn't,
Douglas backed out.
Yeah, he didn't like it. It was too weird for him.
The cover of Burnt Weenie.
Yeah, the whole thing, the whole concept with the ads and with the... That was only one cover of several others. Well, that's the only one that's ever been used for anything else.
Right.
There were some others that were done for other packages. As I mentioned, one of them was Richie Havens, which Frank wanted to call the Mad Gummer.
The Mad Gummer.
The Mad Gummer, yeah.
Cal, what's the origin of that word mope?
Moop, M-O-O-P.
Yeah, what's it mean?
I don't know if it's just, what's the word, just, a nonsense word, or if it means something. I don't remember now.
Frank came up with it?
Yeah. You've seen ads for it, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah. So that's what they were for. They were for this Alan Douglas record company.
Right.
Do you have the originals that you made for other album covers?
Well, I might have some of them. The Burnt Weenie one was the only one that was ever really perfected, because right around when I was doing the covers, it kind of collapsed, so I never finished the other ones. But there are some pieces. You might have even seen that there might be odd pieces of art that were laying around if you ever had the opportunity to see some of the stuff that was in the vault, because I did come across one. In fact, weren't you with the vault in the vault with me once when I got a Johnny Winter photograph?
We were in the vault together, and we put a pile of stuff together, and then Gail...
Johnny Winter photograph, because a friend of mine wanted a copy of that picture. It was the one that was in the 10th anniversary book.
Yes, and Gail freaked when she saw that we had gathered this pile.
You didn't like that?
No, that's the only thing I remember about it, but now I do remember
I
that.
was working on a job for her.
Right.
What a stupid thing. Anyway, I remember seeing a piece of art from that cover series in that pile, so I think Frank had some of it. I might have had some of it. I don't know.
Right.
But anyway, none of the rest of it was really ever fully, evolved into actual finished pieces or anything. But so, this one, the Burnt Weenie piece.
So in the nature of the fly-by-night, rock industry that Frank was working in, depending on what cash flow or whatever he needed, he put an album out and he took Burnt Weenie. It really didn't fit, but he didn't tell you to do that. He just stuck it on.
Right, he stuck it on. And part of the reason was because I had just recently essentially quit, although I don't know if those were the terms.
Can you give the date of that?
Pardon me?
You know the date?
Well, I could figure it out. I'll try and get some dates together, before we do the interview.
Another particular...
It would have been before Burnt Weenie Sandwich. It was actually that whole period starting with Weasels, when Neon Park did Weasels, was as a result of the fact that I quit. I was tired of getting paid $100 a week or whatever the hell it was,
And it was after the Mothers broke up?
Was it?
Or that'd be the August, September '69.
It was actually before they broke up, but it was around the same time probably, but it was before that because I came back, it was early in the summer I think, I came back east, then I went back again, and during that period Frank had gotten Neon Park to do the cover for Weasels, and then I saw him again. He was working on editing Uncle Meat, the early parts of Uncle Meat, and I went and saw him, and then he said, I have this other job I want to do for you. I want you to do for me, and I started working for him again. But then after that, it was all freelance.
But editing, you mean the album Uncle Meat, or the movie?
No, the movie.
Right.
And editing the movie Uncle Meat, the earlier, film version. But then, so during that period, there was a lot of things happening, and everything was in flux. And one of the things that happened was that Frank had this piece of art he needed a cover for Burnt Weenie, and John Williams was doing the packaging, and I guess so let's use this.
Right. So he had to get in touch with you because you had gone back east.
No, he didn't need me for it. He owned it,
Oh, okay.
Well, let's not say he owned it.
Right. The thing is that comes out in...
Had it in his possession.
Right. That's February 70. Can you place where you were when you saw that album came out? Like, were you back?
Well, I might have known about it before it came out.
Right.
But then I was probably back involved with Frank. So I was only out of the picture for a short period, when I left in a huff and then I came back,
In summer and fall of '69.
Yeah.
And he breaks up the Mothers in there, and he goes to Europe with Beefheart. He becomes Beefheart's manager for that tour to Europe.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, that was, and they have that Muji in Belgium concert. Remember, it was really cold, Jerry? That's the one he was...
Oh, you were there for that?
No, I just read interviews. I actually saw footage of it on a Canadian TV show back then, 1970, 71.
Huh.
But it's he refers to it in interviews, and he said he was managing Beefheart.
Right.
And yeah, it's a different period. But that's that flux period, say from the summer of '69 to the beginning of '70, that you were going in and out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Are you recording this?
Yeah, but Cal, let me say one thing. I think we should go about it this way because it's too hard for you to... None of this will ever be released.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying I want to see who you are because since we started getting into...
Right, but here's the thing. None of it will be released, and the best way to clear it is if we ever want to do it and release a dialogue between you and Bob, it's good. You have too many legal things, so we won't do it that way. All we'll do is have you two talk.
Right.
If someday I wanted to type some of it up...
Well, I think we should. I mean,
right, you and Bob would definitely have approval of everything. So if
and
you
he'd have final approval.
Yeah, and you have final approval. So then you don't have to go, well, I don't want to say this or that. Because then when you can just read it in the in the transcript.
Right.
But there was one question. We're doing research on this article that you put in the Mother's 10
years on the road.
10 years on the road, and it was a article from the Daily Report of Ontario, and it said Vice Squad raids local film studio. And you know that little article.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Frank's sitting there at the board, mixing board, and then there's another photo. It says record your band.
Right.
Now we're trying to just find out the date. Bob wants to know the date. Do you know any
date on the article?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because he guessed. Go ahead.
We figured it out. A couple of articles Jerry had. He has an interview with. He has an article of Frank in the Ontario Daily Reporter from September 20th, 64, where they're talking about the film he's making called Captain Beefheart.
Mm-hmm.
And I just listened.
Have you talked to Motorhead about any of this stuff?
I've not. No.
He'd be the one that would really know details about that period because he was involved with Frank and they might have even been living together at some point during that period.
Yeah, you're right, because what I did last night, Nige gave Jerry a dub of the interview in August 71, 25 years ago, between Dave Wally and Frank. And they discussed this whole Boston period. So I listened to it last night, and it helped me refine the timing. And Motorhead is sitting in on the dialogue. And they're discussing when Frank got arrested, and then when he left Cucamonga after he got out of jail, they went to that little house he used to live on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at Alvarado and Beverly or someplace.
Right.
And I've seen that little house years ago, and Motorhead lived just down the street. So you're right, Motorhead is aware of everything that's going on. As a matter of fact, Motorhead talks about how he went out to get the hamburger that day, and so he wasn't there when Frank got busted.
Uh-huh.
He was down the street. And Don Preston told me last year that Frank came over to his house right when he got out of jail. I mean, Don was down there in L.A., so it's Don, Motorhead, and Frank are interacting. But here's the thing, because of the couple things he said, I could pin it down. Jerry shows me this article, September 20th, and Frank said to Wally that in retrospect, they put a bunch of articles in the paper about him, one or two, and it was that publicity that caused him to get busted.
Uh-huh.
And he didn't say this, but I think he would think conspiratorially that they actually put the articles in to set it up to draw attention so that they could bust him at a certain level. So we know that he was in this, and he said there were a couple of articles out on him, and then he was busted shortly after. So we know it's after September 20th, 64, and probably before November 64. So we called the Pomona Library today, and we got this lady going through the microfilm to find the exact article.
But there's no date on the reprint of it, huh?
No, that's the strange thing. No, none of the reprints ever had the date, so I just thought if you ever had the original, if you noticed the date, but...
If it's possible, but I would have thought I would have left it on there. I don't know why I wouldn't have, but...
Would Frank have clipped it? Did he have any control on that level?
Well, if it was clipped, it would have been clipped before I got it. I mean, he would have no reason to want to remove the date. It just simply might have been clipped inadvertently, or maybe the date wasn't on that part of the newspaper. You know, sometimes they're on a different...
Right, well, let me give you a bizarre theory why. I'm not saying he clipped it, but an amazing thing happened on the Wally interview. He cracked the whole code last night.
Yeah.
But anyways, on another level, but I just want to see, do you remember the address in Charles Street where you and Frank lived together?
Yeah.
What's the number?
54A.
Okay, good, because we live in New York, and I occasionally take these Greenwich Village tours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a guy goes and he takes you around and shows you the history of the village.
Yeah, they have a little plaque there.
No.
Well, they have a little flag there.
Yeah, a little flag there, 1348. But the thing is that this guy had really good stuff on Eugene O'Neill 20s and 30s period.
Yeah.
And he didn't have much on the 50s, 70s. And I said, you could go around to magazine people and, I told him you could supplement your 60s thing.
Sure.
And I just found out, rereading some article, that it was Charles Street. And he didn't cover too much in Charles Street, but it was within his area. So I'm going to tell him the next time I see him this fact.
Yeah.
And he can put it into his tour.
Sure.
54A, you mean it's a duplex? Or?
It was a basement apartment.
Oh, A is the bottom, means the bottom.
Would have been,
54. So that's been on my mind the last month about where the hell it is on Chelsea. So you remember, good.
Sure, I have some pictures from there, too.
Well, you could sell them to this guy, because he has a little book there, and he shows you the pictures of things. You know what I mean? If he wanted, what he did have was the building that was blown up by the SDS people. You remember that? In March 70, They just arrested Kathy Borden about 2 years ago. Remember, she was
I remember that.
undercover
for
for
the explosion, particularly.
Yeah, she was one of the escapees who survived the explosion. And Dustin Hoffman was right beside. He was in the building next door to when it happened, and he ran out. I remember seeing footage of the explosion, and the news reporters saw Dustin gathered out in the street. But this guy said that Dustin ran out holding a vase, and the valuable vase was something he was just dropping off at a friend's place right then. A Tiffany lamp.
Oh, yeah?
And so this guy had that fact. But the interesting thing is, they rebuilt it, and it's got a jutting window. Now, that violates the whole thing because it was declared in 70-71 a historical federal heritage site. And so here's this row of traditional Greenwich Village things, and you have this window jutting out. And so why is that? And he said, well, that was rebuilt by the owner like a month before they changed the law, where you weren't allowed to change the exterior of the building to follow the federal preserve the heritage laws. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a real anomaly. You walk along, I think it's West 12th Street or something, there's this weird window sticking out this whole row, and there's nowhere else in that whole area of the village you'll see that. And that's the place that blew up. So I wanted to know Charles Street.
Cal, do you mind if I ask what year you were born?
1947.
And when did you first have the moniker of Ralph the dog? You know, did you draw that as a kid, or did you have some sort of thought that you were a dog at any time? Or what was the year that developed and why?
Probably about 65 or 66. Just when I was playing with like underground comic ideas, you know. And then I think I used it in the Moop ads first. That particular image, one of those Moop ads.
Right, and you drew the image.
Yeah.
And it's like an alias of you.
Well, everybody says that, but that was not my intention. I mean, people say it looks like me.
Oh, so it was actually you drew it, and then they said, "Oh, that looks like you." So it developed from there.
Right.
So you never said that's me.
Nope. Said that. Although I have taken to use it as my logo, basically, primarily because it's something neat and it's cohesive throughout all the periods. I've used it over and over again. So.
And because of the myth that it's you?
No, not really. I mean, just as a graphic element more than anything else.
Is it like your you are your original little invention, your image?
Sure, if you want.
Yeah, it was when you were quite young. I mean, you were 18 or something.
Probably when I first, maybe between 18 and 20.
Yeah.
Sometime there.
Now, did that relate to Fido and the dog image in Frank? Did he appropriate? Is that?
Well, I think that actually started. Well, I started doing. It was like in the Moop ads. If you look, have Jerry show you those Moop ads if he has a copy somewhere.
Right.
Something, and you'll see the dog snouts on Frank and on some of the other characters in there. I hate to say, well, that was all my idea, but because I don't remember all the details, and certainly it was a collaborative thing, but I think that I brought that concept in because of what I was doing before that, which was drawing little animal cartoons, kind of Crumb-style stuff, like his early Crumb.
Were you aware of Crumb in 65?
Yeah, sure. I mean, he wasn't real big then, but I was aware of him. But it was more from my much earlier love of Carl Barks' work, the guy that did the Donald Duck stories.
Yeah.
And just the whole idea of using the dog snout was something, having these anthropomorphic dog people was something that I had been fascinated by long before I did anything like that for Frank.
And then you may have showed it to him, and then he felt it fit into whatever he thought he was doing.
Yeah, but I hesitate to say that that's the way it happened because I don't remember the exact situation. And I also want to emphasize that it was not something that I invented. I mean, it was common to... I don't think that the Crumb stuff that was... I don't even know what was out then. This would have been in 66, I guess. But it was certainly before Fritz the Cat, and where he really got into doing the anthropomorphic things. But it was still like kind of an underground, the very beginnings of underground comicdom using the anthropomorphic animals too,
Right.
So it wasn't something I invented, certainly. I mean, when I say invented, I mean, took from the earlier Disney use of it, because other people were doing that too,
But did you grow up with the dog as a pet? Or did,
yeah.
Yeah. What was your dog's
And
name?
cats.
What's your dog's name?
Yeah, I've had so many of them, you know. I couldn't tell you what they were when I was a kid at this point. When my last one was Kaiser.
But I mean around before 18 years old.
Couldn't tell you.
Okay.
So
I couldn't remember.
So the
I
thing,
might have, if I had a long time to think about it, I might come up with some of them, but...
yeah. Now you had nothing to do with Absolutely Free. That was done by Frank.
Right.
Right. I think there's a Fido is on the cover.
Yeah.
Well, you know, one of the things with that cover, a lot of the concepts came just from little ads in the back of magazines,
Right.
which is kind of obvious, you know. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't remember the specific references, but the things like Dingy Teeth and, you know,
Right.
there are all those little ads, and I'm sure that one of them was probably like a dog food, little dog food ad or something.
Fido collar.
That was my take on it, anyway.
No, it's a collar.
The collar, right?
Yeah, the dog collar. But it's like Frank was fascinated by those little fringe advertising because he wanted to market the mothers through that kind of stuff.
Well, that would be one reason. I don't know if it was the only reason. I mean, I think it's the same thing that kind of fascinated pop artists, you know.
Yes.
We're doing this stuff using that kind of imagery and, you know.
So Frank...
You know, it's like pop art was really happening at the time, so it was, you know, it's kind of a whole pop art thing, really.
That's right, yeah. No, I'm just saying that's one thing that he would be looking at that because he advertised in comic books. His mother's out.
Yeah. That's true.
So the thing is, you got Frank...
So wasn't the first one ad for One Hit for the Money?
No, Freak Out. I think
before that?
my friend got Freak Out in '66 because I think he saw an ad in the comic book.
Really?
Yeah, but I'm not sure. You know, but that's my memory of it. I've always assumed it was the first album. What do you say, Jerry?
First
I
time I
always
was
thought the
advertising.
first comic ad was for One Hit for the Money because I really remember that the concept, you know, Frank saying we were going to put this in a comic and getting together with them and how difficult it was to make sure that, you know, they had like the 6-month deadline. I mean, it's just all these ridiculous, difficult things to get that ad in.
Okay, yeah, Jerry's saying you're right. It wasn't the first two albums.
Yeah, I don't think that they were advertised.
We would know that.
He had some weird ads for them, but probably mostly like in the free press.
Right.
And then, you know, actually I started doing ads. I don't know if Frank had placed any ads before I was there for absolutely free, but he had done some ads himself, and I remember they were placed mostly in like Hit Parader and Jazz and Pop. There was one.
No, you're right. Now I remember my friend was real into rock, you know, rock and roll as a kid, and so he would read Hit Parader. That's probably where he saw them, Hit Parader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen any for Freak Out in anything, actually, come to think of it.
So you're saying that We're Only for the Money was the first one, and that was in Hit Parader?
No, I'm saying Absolutely Free. My recollection was the first ads.
In Hit Parader?
Mostly in Hit Parader, Jazz and Pop, and then of course there were trade ads and some other music publications.
Right. And, you know, that's Freak Out is summer of 66. Absolutely Free comes out by the summer of 67, Jerry? Yeah, by at least the spring of 67. So in that blur of that year, I would mix up Freak Out with Absolutely Free, but Absolutely Free did have ads in Hit Parader.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're coming fast, you know, the two albums.
Right.
Now, what do you know the date you first met Frank, or the period? It was at 66?
Well, actually, I ran into Frank several times in L.A. I was in L.A. before I actually formally met him. They were playing, this is even before Freak Out came out, they were playing at the Whiskey and maybe a couple other places. And although I never saw them because I was kind of a street urchin, didn't have any money to get one.
Had you hitchhiked out from Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Okay, you're part of the youth culture that was starting to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost actually before that because it was before the Summer of Love and all of that.
It would have to be 65, early 66. Was it the winter or something?
It was actually, the first trip was in the summer of 65.
And that's where you would have seen them in that period in the clubs.
No, actually, then I came back in the fall of 65 through 66, and I went to one of the Freak Out sessions quite by accident. I was hitchhiking, and this carload of girls picked me up and said, "We're going to a session. You want to come along?" And I, sure, you know. I wound up going to the recording session for Help I'm a Rock.
You were there?
Yeah.
Isn't that weird, eh? The synchronicity that you never knew that you'd be working for this guy. You didn't even know who he was.
Right.
And so you did...
Well, I knew who he was because then I had heard of them, before. They were playing around. And I also was hanging out at Cantor's before it became big, and there were maybe about 20 kids that kind of hung out there a lot, and I was hanging out with them, and there were all these... there were a couple of... Well, there were a number of pop stars that popped in, but Frank was one of them, and he was always there in this huge fur coat.
Right.
And this was before that, so I was aware of him.
So that was probably the summer of 65, and then you actually went to the session in the fall of 65.
Yeah, but I think all of that happened in the fall, because the summer, I didn't spend a lot of time in Hollywood. I stayed in Venice, and we just slept on the beach in Venice, and then met a bunch of girls that lived in Palos Verdes, and their parents were away, and we stayed there a lot. And,
You got them pregnant and ran away for a while.
Is that on tape?
Yeah. No, did you, so you're saying you might have...
Back.
What?
I came back. I hung out in Hollywood more. I lived in off of La Brea somewhere.
When you say you came back, you went hitchhike north to San Francisco or someplace?
No, well, we did that too, but no, I came back east again. Started art school in
September
of what year are we in now?
65.
65, and then dropped out after about 6 weeks because I just couldn't stand being in Philly after being in California. It started to get cold, and I couldn't go back. So
you
went back, and Thanksgiving I hitchhiked out again, this time by myself. The first time was with a friend, and wound up, where the hell did I wind up? There was a friend living in West Hollywood, I think. Not West Hollywood, West LA. And I stayed there through Christmas and hung out in Hollywood a lot. But then wound up moving over by La Brea somewhere with the same friend. And came back in June of 66. So during that period was when I ran into Frank several times, and then wound up at the Freak Out session, and then some other weird things happened. I can't remember now.
Okay, so in the summer...
The album came out, I guess I was up in Berkeley when it came out.
Right. And that was June, July.
July?
Well, I know there's an ad in the 10-year book, is the big ad in front of some store, and it's July 66, and it was doing well.
Yeah, well, so it must have come out before that. I think it came out right before I left Berkeley, which would have been in June.
Okay. So, well, it could have been like his anniversary month, May, the founding of Mother's Day in May. Maybe he released it in May. Luckily.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So, I know, there's a record of it somewhere.
Right, so that May, in the summer of 65, you do not hear anything about the Zappa scene when you're first here in Venice.
Not really. It's possible that, I don't remember really, because mostly I wasn't spending much time in Hollywood.
Right.
It was either in Venice or down on the peninsula there with my rich friends.
Yeah.
Or we went up, I was with this other friend that I hitchhiked out with, and we went up north too, and we spent some time in Oakland at the Kingdom of Apgar.
What's that?
Well, before they put the one of the freeways through there was this huge mansion that was going to be torn down, and this bunch of art freaks rented the place real cheap, and we crashed there for at least a few weeks. It was just kind of a commune of sorts.
Right.
A pre-psychedelic commune.
Right.
Of artists. And then we spent time in San Francisco, hung out on North Beach. My friend played the guitar, and we hung out a lot at just kind of folk clubs, There was a neat one there right on from the street that was like vertical.
Is that Sandy Hurwitz?
No, this was a friend of mine named Rick Ragweed. This is his stage name.
That was the stage name.
Yeah, he lives up in Mendocino now.
But you've just gotten out of high school, right?
Yeah, I graduated in 64.
Oh.
I took a year off, actually, before I started high school. And during that period...
Before you started college?
Before I started college,
yeah. And then, so then you go back in 65, and then you drop out and come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now why are we talking about this? I forget why we were focusing. Oh, I just asked when you met him.
When I met Frank,
yeah. So you actually have... you're just a kid, you're inside the whole hypnotism of the scene, so you're just a little Rumpelstiltskin sort of thing, or you're a victim of Rumpelstiltskin, you're just seeing Zappa, you never, sitting in his coat, you're just looking at him from the distance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I was really fascinated by his art, his music, because it was so different from everything else. Not that I was against anything else. See, I never really put them as polar opposites, even though they were different. By that I mean, the other music that was happening, even though...
the Birds and everything, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I dug it all, basically. Although I wasn't in the drug scene at all, so I wasn't into that culture so much. But the thing about Frank's music was that it was so different and interesting and rich, in this kind of freak out, when it came out. It was just...
Yeah, but that's 67. Where you first experienced Frank's music in this recording studio.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
And then
But for some reason, it didn't seem odd to me.
Right, and then did you ever see him in clubs before the album comes out in May, June 60?
I can't remember because, like I say, I didn't have much money to spend to go to clubs. I did go to a few clubs, and I remember seeing Frank, but I don't remember if he was performing. There was one time when he performed with somebody other than the Mothers, and I think I might have seen that at the Trip or something.
Right.
I don't know what that was all about, actually.
What'd you say, Cal?
Maybe Neil Diamond? He did. The Mothers backed Neil Diamond.
No, I don't think it was Neil.
Or just solo with Ray and Frank?
No, I don't remember. It's so vague. I'd have to think about it more.
And so then when the album came out, that you were able to concentrate and get into his music.
Yeah.
You had an artifact to deal with. And then you get even more intrigued.
Yeah, and it seems odd to me now that I didn't make a big deal out of the fact that I was in it. So I must have, that I was actually participated in it in some very obscure, minor way, but...
You mean in retrospect, just now you're thinking of that?
Yeah, but yeah. I don't remember. I just do remember that I got it immediately and played it everywhere I went for all my friends,
As you crashed all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we know that you end up hired by Frank in Charles Street, right? So how do you go...
Well, actually, that was before Charles Street. That was while he was still over on, I think they were on West Broadway. No, on West
There's a West Broadway in that area.
Maybe it was, but it was right off of Bleecker, or was it Bleecker? Yeah, Bleecker, where the club was, isn't it? Where the Garrick is?
He was living above it or something, or?
It was right around the corner in this really seedy, Italian-smelling apartment building,
Right.
Or at least the lobby and the elevator was like, very garlicky New York middle-low life place.
Oh, it was a mafia zone then.
Yeah. But anyway, I actually, when I came back to Pennsylvania, went back to art school again.
In the September '66 then?
Started school in the winter. So when did I come back? I came back in June and met up with Sandy, who I had met earlier.
In Pennsylvania?
Yeah. And we rented this place in September in Philly, and that's when I guess I started school again then. But not full-time, I was just part-time. Although it might have not been till the winter that I started. But at any rate, we rented this huge place in Philly for $75, which had like 20 rooms in it. It was huge, enormous, neat old place. And it turned into this just kind of big crash pad, and a lot of friends from California came out, and then met a bunch of other friends and all. And at one point, that's when Frank started playing at the Balloon Farm, I guess, which would have been late in the fall.
November '66.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to go, but I couldn't go, but Sandy and a bunch of other people went up to see them. And I think they might have gone a couple times. And then the next thing I knew, she was up there performing with them when they started playing at the Garrick.
Right.
She performed with them for a couple of weeks, I guess.
That started, it says in Wally's book, that's Christmas, Thanksgiving to New Year's, he started the Garrick.
Yeah, but I don't think it was during that period. It was probably not until... I'm trying to figure out what happened in the meantime.
Oh, well, he started the Garrick starting in the spring of '67. He was back at the Garrick doing Absolutely Free, Pigs, and Repugnant. He did that all summer.
But that's like 3 months later.
Yeah.
I guess nothing much happened during... I was just in school, so...
I know he went to Hawaii the 1st of '67.
Okay, so they were gone, but then... I guess what it was then when...
No, but that might help remind you.
Okay, so Sandy actually moved to New York, I guess, probably before they came back. And I hadn't seen them perform in New York the previous time, but I don't know whether she had met them before that. or she just had seen him perform. But anyway, when they came back in the spring, she hung out with them a lot, and I guess she hung out more with the mothers. But
in the spring of '67.
Yeah, and then she started performing with them. And then Frank was working on the ads for Absolutely Free. The album was not out yet. The cover work had all been done, but he really needed some help. And Sandy Esra told him about me, now that we were friends. I hadn't actually met him yet. That we should meet, because I did weird art and he needed somebody to do it. So I went up and met him, and he liked the stuff I showed him, and so I started doing work for him.
Right. No,
I was living in Philly because I was still in school for another month or so.
Yeah, that's probably why you're vague about January, February, March. You're in school.
Yeah, I was in school, and it's not so much vague. It's just that I didn't remember there being that gap there between when they saw him and met him, but apparently that must have been, because I'm sure they saw him in the earlier period.
You think you did, or no? They
did.
They did.
That were living in the house with me, including Sandy. Now, whether she met, I'd have to ask her if she met Frank during that earlier period, if she didn't actually meet him until they started playing the Garrick again.
Right.
I don't remember.
I'm wrong about Hawaii. Hawaii was in January '66, right after they did the Freak Out recordings. So
he was back. I guess he was back in California then, because wasn't he working on Lumpy Gravy?
Yeah, you're right. There's a picture of him in L.A. in the L.A. Free Press in L.A.
Yeah, he was working. He was recording the first part of Lumpy Gravy, which I guess was going to be Lumpy Gravy until they had trouble with Capitol.
No, you just clarified something, because I think in Ben's book, I always had this image I knew I saw once, the picture of Frank in L.A. It was a little L.A. Free Press article, Frank's doing Lumpy Gravy, a picture of him. Okay, it's in L.A. Then I read in Bren Watson or somebody that he did it in New York.
Mm-hmm.
But they were split up, recorded in two different places.
Right, and there was a period in between when he wasn't actually working on it because, or might have been working on it, but he wasn't actively working on it because of all the other stuff going on. But I think he first was going to do it as just the instrumental, the orchestral piece, and the idea of adding all of the vocal dialogue was later. Yeah,
in New York.
Yeah.
All right, so is Sandy Ursi? What's the name of this? Hurwitz.
Yeah.
H.
Etra Mohawk.
Hurwitz. Who's the one who had an album out in '69, '70? I remember.
That was Sandy.
Yeah, it had a TV screen on the cover.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's...
You did the cover, Cal?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got Frank on the TV screen.
Mm-hmm.
So you meet...
Well, we're still in New York. We did that.
So you meet him in the spring of '67 is the formal new level of meeting him.
Right.
Business level.
Right.
And then did you stay there then?
No, I was still in New York. I was still in Philly for about another month, finishing my classes, and then probably went up in June and moved into his place temporarily.
The Eggman.
What?
The Eggman moves in.
Right. Where'd you read that?
That's in where is that? Is it in Ben's book? I've been reading...
in Frank's book. Does he talk about New York in his book?
No, it's Ben. Have you read Ben Watson's book?
Well, parts of it.
Right. No, he talks about the meaning of you holding the crate of eggs on the cover of Only for the Money.
He does. What's the meaning?
That you ate eggs a lot. Is that true?
I probably... Now, here's the story, and what happened actually was, this was later when we were living on Charles Street. I would go there at night and work a lot, late at night, and get hungry, and there was nothing to eat except eggs, so I'd make eggs.
So you were forced to.
Huh?
You were forced to. You did not have that inclination before.
Yeah, I probably ate eggs no more than anybody else ate eggs, but if you're looking for something to eat and you go to the refrigerator and, that's what's there.
Sounds like us here.
An egg sandwich,
Yeah, sounds like, what is it, soup and old clothes, or salad days and moldy mayonnaise. But so, when you went there in June '67, they're on the West Broadway address, or around from the bleacher.
And then Gail hadn't come out yet, or she had gone back to California and was not back again yet. And so Sandy and I actually moved into his apartment because Frank was off somewhere else. I don't remember. Maybe they were out on some short, doing a couple other
gigs
or something. And then when he came back, Bobby, his brother, and Dick Barber, and Bob Harris, the guy, not the guy that was in the band, but the other another Bob, or is that his name, Bob Harris?
Yeah, that confuses Ben in the book. He gets all screwed up about the Bob Harris from 1970 and then the Bob Harris who's later in the band. He thinks
But he's saying there's
Bob Harris is in the band?
He thinks it's the same guy, but someone says
no, but you're
Talking about a different Bob Harris.
Yeah, you're pointing out there were two of them, and that's why the time stretch is not odd. Ben thought it was weird that this Bob Harris. What were you gonna say, Jerry?
No, there's two Bob Harrises that
saying.
played music with Frank. So Cal,
There's the third one.
so
there's
Cal's
a third
saying
one.
a third Bob Harris.
I don't know if that's his name, so maybe I'm mistaken.
Yeah.
Right, but
I don't know his name, but he's some kind of a movie reviewer now.
okay. Whereas Ben is confused because he doesn't know the exact details of how many Bob Harrises there are. Yeah.
But anyway, these three came out in Dick Barber's Volkswagen Bug and spent a couple weeks, and it was kind of the high point of the Garrick period, I think, because they were all working at the Garrick, and
The summer of '67, and it's
so we were all sleeping on the floor of Frank's apartment.
had Gail come out.
Yeah, she had come out by then.
Okay.
This was only for a couple of weeks, and then I found a place, a loft uptown, and then started working on stuff for Rolling for the Money. There was a loft over the Garrick, over the Cafe A Go-Go, at the top, on the top floor, that we set up to work in for my studio, kind of.
Yeah. And that's where you worked. You didn't live there.
No, I just worked there on the mannequins mostly.
And then in the fall, Frank moves to Charles Street,
Yeah, then he moved to Charles Street, and
and you crashed there
no, I had my own place, but I would work there a lot.
and eat eggs, right?
That's when that period came in.
Cal, we have to make a quick phone call. Can we just call you back?
I was just about to say this is about all I can take.
Right. Okay. So that's good.
My neck's really bothering me.
So
So we'll do it next week.
So how about earlier next week? Is that all right?
Sounds like it probably will be, but I'm never sure.
Right. So I'll just call you in the morning, and then we'll go from there.
And is that the only time that you're available? Are you going after that? Or?
No, but Friday's the best time because we call you free, right?
Yeah, but as I'm saying, we could continue even if we can't cover it all. I'd rather just do it like we're doing.
Oh, that's how we'll do it. We'll
That's
do
great.
it Friday, next Friday, anytime between 9 a.m. and 3 our time.
Right, but we could do it as an ongoing thing. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
you're
It'd be
available instead of trying to condense the whole thing into this next Friday, too.
right.
Yeah.
You want to do it before? You don't want. You want to do it on Friday?
Yeah, Friday.
Fridays are the best because we can do it for free.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I really appreciate your time. I wanted to tell you one quick connection is that in the graphics on the new Flipside article will be out within the month. I put an image through a fax machine and stretched it because you taught me how to do that. And so there you go. Your influence is affecting Bob's work.
Okay. Before you go, Calvin, you brought up the whole Gail thing. When is Pamela Zarubica living in New York?
Well,
Just the date. You don't have to go into it. Just the date, so I can focus on it.
in Charles Street, but she came out to go to Europe on that first European tour.
Right. That's August, September. That's September '67.
I have the exact dates, but that I can find that.
So she came out and she stayed at Charles for a few days until they went on tour.
Yeah, it might have been for more than a few days.
Okay.
And then I think she was still around when we came back, but I'm not sure, because I think I remember her being around for more than just a couple days.
And then you though would work at Charles, eat eggs, but you had your own place uptown.
Right.
Right. And do you know the exact time when Frank moved back into Tom Mix's place in the spring or June of '68?
I went out in May, and Gail had rented the place by then, but I don't think she and Zarubica were actually staying together and Zarubica moved in with us too. I don't know if you knew that. She lived there for a while.
At Tom Mix's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we first moved in. But they were staying at a hotel on Sunset and when I first arrived, and that would have been, now I'm confused if it's March or May, actually, that I went out. It was before summer, so it was late spring,
Right, April.
Actually, I don't know.
And Frank was still in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he came out by June, I guess.
Because you have on Uncle Meat the statement by Pamela Zarubica, I went to Europe, I did the Surfers, I did this, and then I came back to my mother's.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that has to be recorded.
I have that?
No, that's on the album, Uncle Meat. The voice of cheese.
Right.
And she talks about coming back to her mother's after failing in all the groups. And that comes out in '69. So that has to be recorded sometime in 68 after she comes back from Europe, because she was in Europe through 67, maybe into 68. And so...
But I always thought she was referring to another period when
No, you're right. She went to Europe in 66, 67, and she came back to L.A., and Frank asked her to come to New York to look after the baby, or the imminent baby, and then to go to Europe. So that's where she would have said that, coming back to their mothers.
Yeah, she was referring to that.
Okay, Calvin, that's great.
We'll continue next week. And,
it will never end, Calvin.
What?
It will never end, Calvin. It goes on and on.
I have a great idea, too, because I'm setting up a website, which should be up pretty soon. It's Ralph.com. If you get to a browser somewhere, you can look at it.
It's there now, okay.
Well, it's not there yet.
Oh, it will be.
There'll be something up within the week, I'd say, but it's just my very beginning stages.
There's the Ralph thing, Jerry, the conceptual continuity.
RALF.com.
And
I want to put some interviews and stuff on there, so once we put this all together, I could also reprint it on the website.
Okay, that'll be great.
In fact, we could even have it as an ongoing thing on the website, which would be neat, kind of a continuing long blog.
That's right, and I'm the guy who has the memory that we can do it with.
Yeah, you guys know the stuff. So
right.
It'd be a good, and I have a pretty long interview I just did with Tom Brennan.
Right.
That I can refer to too for some other material if we get stumped or if we need more ideas or something.
Well, great. I'm glad I reconnected with you 25 years later.
Do you ever get into New York?
What?
Do you ever get into New York if you're just...
Well, not too often. But, if I do, I'll look you up. When are you going back there?
In another week.
Here, I'll give you our phone number.
Okay.
Oh, we're getting ready.
We'll do it next week, Bob.
Yeah, we got 10 minutes. We're presenting the treatment for AIDS and all these diseases. We got an amazing thing happening here that you should come to New York and visit the lab and see what we're doing. It's going to make history, so you can be part of it. So the number is 212.
Wait a minute, I have to go.
Yeah, we can get it next week. No, because she might leave early.
I know, but 212. You got a pencil, or you don't have a pencil?
Hold on a minute, I got one.
See, Bob, we can do it next week. He's not going to... But Sheila's going to leave early.
If I feel we need to complete it, let's complete it. He may need to call. You never know. She may leave early, so what? Doesn't matter.
It always works out, Jerry.
Yeah, it always works out, Jerry.
But
Okay, 212-861. 9657. 861-9657.
What's your address?
325 East 65th.
And what do you use as your mailing name or whatever?
It's Carolyn, Lyn, Carolyn Dean.
You have to put doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Carolyn Dean, Dean. And it's New York, 10021. 10021. Okay, Calvin?
Okay. Well, we could do, too, if you're in New York, we can do a conference call, so...
Yeah, that'd be good.
Continue with it. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Cal.
Next week.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, bye.
Appreciate it.
Bingo. We did it.
We did it.
We connected. You get that, Jerry? We connected.
That was perfect.
And don't be bummed out if we don't get her. That's irrelevant.
I'm not bummed out.
It's 122. That's when you should call. 122. Look at it.
Ask for Louise. Sit here, Bob, please.
Thank you for calling the Ontario City Library. If you know the extension of the library unit you are calling, please enter it at any time. For library service desks, press 1. For hours, telescript listing and renewal, or information on the dial pack, press 3. To repeat this message, press 9. If you would like to speak to an operator, please press 0 or stay on the line. One moment, please.
Yeah. So you're saying Jerry went to we do a big one? You mean that's Jerry? Or that's anybody?
That was anybody.
So we knew that once he started talking to Bob, then it would alchemize.
Yeah, because it didn't take much energy on their part. You do all the talking.
That's why I was flashing a sign. Let him talk.
No, but it intrigues him.
No, you're right.
He said, "Who's this guy who knows everything?" And
Reference desk, Gary speaking now.
How is Louise still in?
Yes.
And what is her extension, first of all?
Well, she's not at an extension right at the moment.
Oh, what's the reference desk extension?
Well, you have it at 2202 or 2205.
2202?
202.
Is the reference desk extension?
Yes.
Okay, could I talk to her? This is Jerry, and she was looking up an article for me.
Okay,
Thank you.
please hold on.
220 at 122, Jerry. It's 122, Carol.
Hello.
Hi, Louise.
Yes.
This is Jerry Fielka, and we were on the phone all this time, so I was just wondering if you had any luck
Oh,
on...
I'm just started to go through the paper right now, so I'll keep at it till I leave in a few minutes. So.
Oh, okay.
Do you?
And if not, we'll call you on Tuesday.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Great, so we'll leave this.
Okay. In terms of, you notice how 52 becomes the year 53, 54, they start to have more than one number focus, not just 53. Now the ground is, if you focus on 53, then you got a 40-year cycle to 93. But if you focus on 52, you got a cycle to 92, which on my chart I have 77 to 92. So you're always oscillating between 52 and 64, a 12-year cycle, or 12-year phase, right? And it begins in 52 with Marshall, when Innes dies, and 64 when Frank gets busted. Which reminds me, that's the idea I didn't get into, the second idea about the meaning of the bust. And the teaching, you know, the original setup, that he was going to teach people how to do people.
You didn't tell Cal that.
No, I was going to go into it, but when we got distracted on other things.
You didn't. That's called the father theme. That's the father motif, right?
No,
that's
no.
another. That's the third part.
That's the busting.
There's three things you learn from the Wally tape. Three insights.
Yeah, the first thing is the fact that Frank was going to educate the people.
Okay.
You write that down.
Yeah.
The people who do stuff that's not normal educational training film.
What called the factor?
The training film. Call it that. So we remember the training film.
Yeah.
Okay, then what's the next?
Something, and then the father, the one you just said.
That wasn't from Wally. That was from the Life magazine article.
Oh yeah.
Right. So the father thing.
The busted one.
Well, he got busted, but
that's it.
Basically,
two things.
Here's Wally has helped us get the training film idea, plus the date when he was busted. Because when Frank says to Dave, "I had the studio for a year," I wanted to look up in the book, when did he get the studio? August '63. He has it till August '64, and then you found the article September 20, '64, which now we can pin it down when he got busted, right? Because he had the studio for a year, and then it was destroyed shortly after he got busted. So that's what that helped. And then the Life magazine helped the father things. That's part 3, right? And then the fourth theme is the dwarf theme. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but what one didn't you tell Cal?
I only did the dwarf theme. I was then going to go into the training film theme.
Oh,
that's what I'll do next time.
Okay.
In other words, if I come up with an idea that blows him away, and he's going to say that's brilliant, but it can't be totally true, then that stimulates to retrieve his identity in relation to this mind-blowing idea, right? Which is what he did. He acknowledged the brilliance of the theme, but he knew that it couldn't have been totally right. But him wrestling out the idea, trying to figure out, what do we call it?
For a week.
The Phil syndrome, right? The Phil syndrome is, wait a minute, you sure, Bob, that's on tape? It's the Phil Jerry thing. Are you sure Calvin's going to say next week, Bob, you sure that Zappa said the dwarf thing? He'll want to check it, right? Which is the normal filtering process that goes on in the drama of cognition between two or more people. Everybody's always translating it into their terms, and then since you're not exactly the other person, you're going to have to mutate it and adjust it. So therefore, you're going to have to kill a little bit of my stuff to adjust to your stuff, right? And that's the constant drama of cognition, which Finnegan's Wake acts out. And that's what we're doing with Calvin. We're now doing the drama of cognition, recovering the stages of apprehension of what happened with him and Frank, right? Adjusted to Bob's ridiculous interpretation, claiming he's figured it all out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the adjustment. Art is adjustment, said the East, in the Book of Tea, in War and Peace in the Gold Village. But anyway, so you got those 4 themes. The number thing is you go from 52 to 64, 12 years. Because what's neat, you got to figure out, when did Frank write his first composition? He always says he started when he was 13, 14, 12. Frank is vague when he wrote his first piece. You know what I mean? That's 52, 53, 54. Okay?
Wow.
And that fits in with the whole 53 to 93 dialect. But once you make a category,
this is 1952, you're forgetting that there are no boundaries between things and time is all happening all at once. So you don't want to be too categorizing about it started in 52 or it started in 54, you know what I mean? But what you need is that each moment has its own uniqueness, but it's always reflecting the seamless, endless, no time zone. That's why you can never totally focus on what year it is. So you create a range. It's like Before the Beginning, one of the album titles of Zappa's albums in '69, the history of the mothers. One of them was called Before the Beginning. That's important. So if everything begins in 53, you got to start in 52, right? Because that's already anticipating the effects precede the causes, right? So you get a 12-year cycle, 52 to 64, which lays down the whole thing that spirals out for 40 years till 93.
Before the Beginning, that's like when Frank says, Don, what was before the Big Bang?
Right.
He goes, the big.
Yeah. See, they were working that out themselves, you know? So you're right. You started to notice that 52, 53, 54 slide around, right?
So it's got to be Frank wrote his first composition in 53, because that's the key year.
Well, he says 13, 14. Now, if he's a 14 guy, he might trend, in the long run, tend to say when he was 14, because that's subconsciously his number, right? That's why he goes 13 or 14. And I remember him going, not sure, when I was 13 or 14.
Yeah.
Which is, when you're not being a totally visual hypnotist, you don't want to be precise, because you're acoustic, which is non-visual. So you can't do it exactly. But my theory about, I'm saying that Frank, I was going to go into theory, that he clipped off the date. Because this is the thing, it's in the timeless zone. Because it's always happening, he's always redoing it. That's why he clipped off the date. If he clipped off the date, that's my rationalization. You know what I mean? Because that's the eternal point, right? That article. So that's what my theme on that is. Did you hear me yakking as you come in? Can you hear me? I just wonder how loud we are.
I'm the deaf one, remember?
Okay. So what'd you just go do?
I just sat staring in there at some new directors.
All right. So we're talking here. So that's why you go 52, 53, 54. And then you get into 55, Blackboard Jungle, which Frank writes in Life magazine, the breakthrough of that, right? Then you get into 56 and 57 and Sputnik. So they all slide from 52 to 64. It's a sliding 12-year spectrum that Frank is being creative in that's going to influence what comes after. You know what I mean? And it peaks in 66. He says frozen in 66 because, as I say in my essay, everything disappears in 67. So Frank has to do, that's like the end, so he has to go before the end, 66. He can't freeze in 67. And we worked out with Calvin the whole 65, 66 details. You know what I mean? You got it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's going on, Jerry. 52 pickup from 52 to 64.
I get tried to sleep, guys.
Yeah, what are we doing? I'm going to sleep too, I think, because
Fine.
I'll wait a while, but I should sleep before we go.
Let's sleep.
No, but I don't mind keep doing it because we want to be ready for the phone. I don't want to sleep till later because she might phone.
No, Bob, because
It's too early for me to sleep, Jerry. I ain't sleeping now, so it's okay with me because she might phone. I'm going to read this fucking article.
read the article.
Yeah. If you sleep now, you got to let me sleep later. Okay?
You can sleep at 2.
Beg your pardon?
Sleep at 2.
That's nice. She's going to stay and look it up, Jerry.
Well, she might be have left by now.
This is food for me, right?
Yep.
So was that a good interview, Jerry?
That was good.
I don't have a towel. Is this towel a sacred towel or just anyone that anybody's using?
You know where the towels are?
Oh, in the laundry. Oh, you mean new towels? Yeah, under the bench here.
Are you going to sleep?
Garrick with you. How long you in town here till?
Next week. Next Saturday. I'm here till Saturday.
Right. Well, I told you about that thing of getting together.
Right.
To fill you.